Excelente, etc.
Thrill me.
Be afraid. Be very afraid.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Horror Flicks and Guitar Picks podcast. I'm your host, Tim, and today's guest is not only a makeup effects artist, but also a costumer and prop maker as well, and that is the one and only Dan Crawley. How's it going, man?
Good, man. How are you doing?
Doing awesome. I'm stoked to have you on the show. We can dive right into it. Of course, you know, like I mentioned, you do makeup effects and, you know, costuming. Which one was, you know, the dream first, and what inspired you to, you know, pursue these as, an actual career?
Yeah, I mean, costuming was kind of an accident. I never intended for that to happen.
Oh, yeah.
I just kind of fell into it. So, and I don't even know that makeup was always necessarily, I mean, I guess from a young age, it was something that I was very interested in, but I don't think it really solidified as a career choice until the very end of high school. I think most of my life, it was just something artistic, right? I was always drawing as a kid. I was always painting. I would say mostly drawing. And I think for like my earliest years, I wanted to be an animator. You know, I wanted to like draw cartoons and stuff. And then, you know, probably like most people who are into animation when they're little kids, it goes from like Disney animations to then, you know, as a teenager and adolescent, I got into comic books. So then I was like, oh, I want to be a comic book artist. And then, but then I think I had always kind of had this side interest in makeup effects and really more I wasn't allowed to watch those movies as a kid.
Yeah.
So I hadn't ever seen those movies and been like, oh, I love that movie or I love that character. But I did see a lot of the behind the scenes stuff where I'd be able to flip through magazines on the magazine stand. And that was the stuff that was always interesting to me, is not necessarily even the finished product as much as like the process. Because I think I'm just a builder at heart. I just want to make things with my hands, whether it be drawing them, sculpting them, painting them. I just want to make things. And so, it was always like a side interest. And I think, you know, like most people, you're getting towards the end of high school, like, okay, well, what am I going to do after high school? And I think that's where it really solidified. Okay, like I think I want to pursue doing makeup for a career. And so that was kind of, I guess, what led my way into it.
Oh, yeah. No, I just did a convention like a week and a half ago because I host panels at the Tidewater Horror Convention every year in Virginia Beach, and Tom Cook was there. I don't know if you know who that is, but he's an animator. He did like a bunch of Hanna-Barbera and He-Man stuff, and it was nice to meet like a legend in that animation stuff. So I know that's awesome that's kind of where you got your start and kind of just turned your art into like, you know, mixed it with the movies and stuff like that. Do you remember the first like movie you saw, like non-horror or not, that you were like that made you like want to seek out like how that effect was made?
You know, I mean, certainly like I would say like a big deal for me, probably just because of my age. I'm like in my mid 40s. Like I was just like prime age for like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle craze, you know, in the 80s and in the early 90s. So I think probably like a big standout film for anybody at that time was that first Ninja Turtle movie in 1990, and just those Jim Henson suits and animatronic heads. Right around that same time, I remember seeing like a behind the scenes segment on TV. It's probably on Entertainment Tonight or something, just like a really quick clip showing some of like the puppeteering and behind the scenes on Gremlins 2. And so I think, you know, I saw this video with like Rick Baker and Mark Citracki, and they were kind of talking about the puppets, and like they zoom back and I show like all the controls. And that definitely stands out too as something that I can like distinctly remember as being like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like these are puppets and like people made those. And so I think those two things probably stand out the most.
Hell yeah. No, definitely good ass movies for sure. I love Gremlins too. Have you ever seen the Jordan Peele or the Key and Peele sketch about it where they're just
I have, yeah, it's really funny. Yeah, it's kind of it escalates quickly. Yeah, it's funny. And you know, it's not too far off too, right? When you look at that movie, you see some of those Gremlins like what were they like, you know, like how much cocaine were they doing when they were coming up with these like ideas? You know what I mean? Like it's like wild.
Right. They were dipping into Stephen King's 80s stash with the
yeah, exactly.
But no, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles though, that's perfect like example of like makeup effects, why practical works so well, because like this year they just put it back in theaters for an anniversary of the first one, and it like that stuff still looks so like real and so good on screen, and those costumes hold up so well. It's nuts how like good those were, you know, especially for the time and everything. So
yeah, I went to go see it actually for one of those screenings, and I think, believe it or not, that was my first time seeing it on a big screen, because when it came out in the theaters, you know, again, like my parents, like we didn't go to the movies too much and stuff. Like I grew up pretty poor, so I don't think I saw Ninja Turtles for the first time till maybe like on home video, like at a friend's house or something, or we rented it, you know, in a video store. So I think the 35th anniversary screening was the first time I saw it. on the big screen, which was great. And I actually brought my daughter with too, so she was, was she had seen it like a couple weeks before at home. I showed it to her, so she was already excited about it, and then so she got to see it on the big screen. So
Hell yeah, that's awesome. No, there's a lot of movies coming out like in those anniversary screenings that I'm seeing for the first time as well. Even ones that came out like when I was younger, it's just like I just didn't see them. Like some stuff that's not even like coming up, Battle Royale. The Japanese horror film. I don't know if you
oh
know
yeah,
about that, but it's pretty much like what Hunger Games is all based on, but just super violent and more fun. But it that is getting a re-release in theaters and something like that. Like I never would have got the opportunity, especially back in the '90s, because I live in like small town North Carolina. So I got to go to the movies, but it was because we had like a little $3 cheapo theater. But
right.
and we had no like there was not like I had to drive an hour and a half to an AMC. I still drive an hour and 10 minutes like to this day to an AMC. So um
Wow.
yeah, so it's like stuff like that. Like I only got to see what came, and usually it was like what's popular. Like of course, like I grew up in the like '90s, going into early 2000s was when I was going as like a teenager and stuff. So I got to see stuff like The Mummy and Scorpion King, which was not a good example of practical effects and stuff like that.
Right, right.
Uh, but no, I did get to see Passion of the Christ, which was done by Tinsley and crew, which I know you got to work with down the line and stuff. But uh, yeah, that's the one he won the awards. Yeah, because he did. It was crazy that he did Passion of the Christ and go on to do Terrifier. But I don't want to jump too far ahead. But
Sure.
before we dive into your work, which we'll do pretty much after this next question. And my next question is, when about like what age did you start to get into horror movies? If you ever became like a fan, or are you kind of just like a fan of film in general? So you do watch horror and stuff. And if so, do you have some favorite horror films?
I think for me, I got into horror. I remember like at a very young age, like being on the bus going to school, and probably like 10 years old, like fifth grade, and the kid is I was sitting next to on the bus. He like opened up his backpack, like he had some, something like he wasn't supposed to have, like some kind of big secret. And he opens it up, and it's like all these VHS tapes of like Freddy Krueger movies, like Nightmare on Elm Street movies and stuff. And it almost seemed like we were seeing something we weren't supposed to see just looking at the covers. We weren't even watching the movie, just looking at the cover art on the VHS boxes, which in the 80s, I feel like half the stuff at the video store, like you would just rent it because it had a cool cover.
You know,
And again, like I wasn't allowed to watch those things. And I think even if I was allowed to, I probably would have been too afraid to. But I mean, that was like, that kind of, ignited my interest in like Freddy and Jason, that kind of stuff that was big in the 80s. And then maybe like towards the end of middle school, having sleepovers and stuff at like friends' houses, we'd always like rent. Like we had one friend who his parents would let us rent a movie. We could walk to the video store. And we'd rent, yeah, a Friday the 13th movie or a Nightmare on Elm Street movie. And I remember watching those, like almost kind of being a little bit scared of it because I was still so young. But like I didn't want my buddies to think that I was scared of them, so you got to act tough or whatever. And
you know,
so those were probably like my introduction to like horror movies. Um, but then once I started getting seriously into makeup in my later teens, I really got into the Universal Studios kind of classic horror films, like in the 20s, 30s, 40s, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, Dracula, The Mummy, Invisible Man, Creature from the Black Lagoon, like all that stuff. I started really getting into. I think for me, I went through a phase like most people where like I was into gore and stuff, but that was very short lived. For me, I was always more into the horror films that didn't show what was happening because I always felt like what you could imagine was far more horrific or frightening than what they could show you on screen. So I would say I'm definitely not a fan of like blood and guts and gore and over the top, like the torture porn kind of stuff. Like I was way more into like those old Universal monster black and white films where it was kind of left up to your imagination and it was like what was unsaid that was more horrific than what you actually saw. Even things like the Twilight Zone or whatever, you know what I mean? Like kind of like the thinking man's horror as opposed to just like well, let's just show the most gratuitous thing that we can possibly show.
yeah. No, I'm like I'm one of the fans that I like it all. Like I definitely love like Terrifiers like quite a bit, stuff and like also like I like Cannibal Holocaust. I love that type of like crazy shit. But my favorite horror films are stuff like Hereditary, The Changeling, when I think about like when I'm making a list of like my favorite horror films of all time might be stuff like Return of the Living Dead and stuff like that. But if I was to make a list of actual greatest horror films of all time, it would be stuff like The Exorcist, Jaws, uh, you know, um, maybe Rosemary's Baby, stuff like that. So I'm right there with you. Like I like the psychological and stuff, the more stuff that like Like it's not all slow burny, but like a lot of it, like the slow burn stuff. And I do love the Creature from the Black Lagoon is one of my favorite horror films of all time. So I'm right there with you. And I love the like every time they talk about remaking all these old classic films, I can understand doing it just because it's so hard to remaster. Like some of the sound is so bad, and like they're like I love watching the
Yeah.
original Dracula film, but it's so hard to like like do it with a booming sound system because it just like you're amplifying bad sound, so it just like hurts your ears sometimes. And so like I understand wanting to do these remakes, but I'm like just shot for shot it, like go out there and do like I loved the new Nosferatu, but even that like added some stuff that was really like kind of like was it necessary, type thing. So
Yeah. I even like what just came to my mind right now is and it's not like bloody or gory at all. And it would be tricky to do now because nowadays movies, I feel like you can't find out in the moment whatever like the plot twist is or whatever, the big surprise moment in a movie because there's so much promotion before a movie and just like because of the internet, social media, like people spoil the movies. And also to an extent, after like, M. Night Shyamalan came along, we almost like expect a big twist at the end of a movie now.
yeah.
Whereas before you didn't always get that. And a movie just came to my mind that was I didn't know until like it happened in the movie, like, oh my gosh. And I was like so surprised. It was this movie called, it was like early 2000 called The Others
Oh
with
yeah.
Nicole Kidman.
Yeah.
And I just remember like that. I don't want to give it away on the show in case people haven't seen it, but like the plot twist in that, you're like, oh my gosh, like, I like totally didn't see it coming. Like it's not bloody, it's not gory, but it's like it sticks with me, like that kind of thing, more than yeah. I feel like when the blood and the guts is just like displayed right there, there's nothing. It's more just kind of like what you can stomach. It's funny, Terrifier 3, I worked on, but I still haven't seen it. And like when the rest of the crew went to like the screenings and stuff, like I didn't go like I can't I'd be honest with you, like I can't watch that stuff. Like I'm too squeamish, man. Like I can build it and I can make it and I can test it, but I can't see it in context with all the sound and like in the scene and like lit like edited. Like I can only see it if it's like something I'm looking at from like a technical or engineering aspect of it, but like watching it like in context, like I can't. I'm a big baby about that stuff, man.
No, I definitely understand, especially like I could see how seeing everything with the camera and the tubes and everything like else like in the shot like in your eyesight can make it like a lot more stomachable. I don't even know if that's a
Yeah,
word, but I'm making it up for now. But then watching it on screen once they add everything to make it as real as possible, so no, I definitely feel you for sure on that. But that's like my wife. She loves true crime, but she will not watch a horror movie that has like bloody stuff in it. So it's like she can hear
yeah.
about it and stuff and like, all that, but she's not gonna watch anything. So I know it's
That's
not exactly the
interesting
same.
because it's interesting you say that because I feel like the stuff with like all like the blood and guts and over the top gore is while it could happen, a lot of it is like so supernaturally influenced or so like ridiculous and over the top, like it couldn't actually happen in real life, right? And certainly like if there's like a supernatural killer, it's not real, right? But like the true crime stuff is like, no, that actually happened. Like that seems to me like way more horrific and terrible is because like it's not just something that somebody created or thought up with like a story. Like this is something that actually happened to a person for real. Like that seems so much harder to like reconcile in my head. You know what I mean? Because like especially once you have kids, like you start to thinking about like if that happened to like your kid or like your loved one. You know what I mean? It makes it so much harder than just like some crazy monster or creature like slashing and bashing through a bunch of teenagers or something.
Yeah. No, and she won't watch like a real like for instance, she wouldn't watch like the Dahmer series or nothing. She'll watch like just docu stuff, you know what I mean? So
Right.
or listen to a podcast or whatever. But no, I'm with you. The Others is definitely like an underrated one. It's one that I think it was like kind of big for the time because who was in it and all that stuff, but I think it's just easily forgotten, you know what I mean? But
Sure.
it has such good atmosphere and it's definitely just genuinely creepy, which is two things that I like love about or like two things I look for in like my favorite horror movies and stuff. But
It's
you
slow too. Like I don't know that nowadays people have the patience to watch something like that and like let something build over a long period of time. So
yeah. Now, if they put it out with the A24 label, they might be able to make it work. Just 'cause people are
right.
expecting the slow burn at that point. So, uh, but no, hell yeah, no. I think one thing too is Nicole Kidman has become the AMC queen, so she might be able to
Oh,
pull
sure,
some
that's
seats in.
true.
So, yeah,
They should re-release it. Yeah.
right. No, hell yeah. Now have her with the sheet, have the little girl with the sheet like in the cinema with her in the beginning, like segment thing where she's like, "We come here for cinema or whatever." But now, but we can dive into some of your work. Of course, like I said, I was just gonna ask you about like a few of the horror stuff that you worked on, as well as like at the back end, I'll ask about the costuming and stuff. But
Yeah.
one of the not. it was you worked on a few horror things before working on before diving into the Child's Play franchise with Seed of Chucky. What was it like working with Tony Gardner and crew, and what was like some of the stuff you got to do on that film?
Yeah, Tony's great. I've worked with Tony, for Tony, a lot of times over the years. The first time was Seed of Chucky, and I actually started at another shop, also working on Seed of Chucky, shop called Film Illusions that was run by a guy named Russ Schinkel, who was primarily like a mechanic and like did puppets, right? So Tony Gardner, whenever he would get like a job with like a lot of animatronics or robots that had to be built, he would subcontract all that stuff to Russ, and then Tony would build all the cosmetic stuff of it, right? So he'd like do all the sculpting, the molds, the skins, putting it all together, the hair, everything, right? But like the actual internal components, the mechanical puppets, Russ would build all that stuff. So I was working for Russ at that time. And so I started off my first 2 months on the show. I was just building puppets with Russ. So standing at a mill or a lathe and just machining parts and like running cables and like helping him build the robots everything that went underneath. And then when we finished building all that, I was done. He didn't need me anymore. So then that was kind of my introduction to Tony. And so I just hopped over to Tony's shop for another 2 months and worked on all the cosmetic stuff. So then I was primarily on that show, I was just seaming the skins. They were having a lot of trouble getting the seams to disappear on a lot of the skins because, you know, you don't have any, you can't hide anything on a doll. It's a vinyl doll. It has smooth skin. So there's nowhere to hide a seam. It's really difficult. So, you know, you usually have like skin texture at the least. And so it like breaks up the light and makes it easier to get rid of a seam. But they were having some trouble finding anybody who could really get these seams very smooth as like basically glass, like vinyl. And so that was just something I could, you know, for whatever reason, like was able to do well. And so I ended up doing that for a long time there for like my rest of the time on the show. And then I thought I was going to be able to go to set with it. I think they shot in like Romania. And I was all excited and I got my passport and I was like ready to go. And then I ultimately didn't get to go. But yeah, I mean, it was still, I had a great time on 4 months working on that show and, you know, had a really good time on it. And yeah, Tony was great. I worked with him a lot on a lot of shows after that as well. So.
Oh yeah. No, that's awesome. That's one of the good things I love about like these horror guys is a lot of times once they meet somebody that like works hard and that they like, they bring them right back. You know what I mean? Even if it's not every time, they bring them back, you know, from time to time and stuff like that. So. But hell yeah. And then, of course, next up, you worked, well, not next up, just the next up in the questions, but you ended up working on Slither with Todd Masters, which Slither is like jam-packed with practical effects. And there's so many like big practical effects that I'm sure it took a lot of hands on deck. Do you have any fun stories from working on that? And what was it like, you know, working with Todd? Was that your first time working with Todd Masters? And
it was, yeah, it was my first time working with Todd Masters. I mean, that was a huge show. And you're right. There was, I don't remember how many people were there, but they had multiple warehouses and a huge crew because there was so much stuff to build. I think they had an entire warehouse that was just for what they call like the house monster, which was, I think, just like this big giant, like it's like a big giant ball, you know, of skin kind of monster thing.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I worked on Slither, not a ton, like a little bit. The thing is, like Todd Master's shop at that time was doing so many shows at the same time. So I was working on Slither, but I was also working on this other TV show that was happening at the same time called Painkiller Jane. And I was working on a whole bunch of like little projects. So, you know, day to day, it's like you might be the morning working on one show, the afternoon working on something else, the next day working on something else. So my memory of like what I was doing on Slither is mostly, you know, like sculpting and molding and casting like a bunch of like little pieces for different random inserts and effects, like kind of like filling in like, oh, we need, you know, some blobby blistery, you know, chunks over here. We need this thing that looks like it's undulating over there. And like, we need these tentacles, you know, so you were just kind of building bits and bobs, but not necessarily knowing what effect they were going to. It was just kind of like being handed things to build that were all going into who knows what project it was feeding or what effect, you know? So hard to say. Yeah, exactly what my contribution was on that.
Yeah, especially with everything being flesh tone pretty much. So it's like,
right.
I didn't know if you were, shit, you could have been melting dildos for the slugs for all I knew. Because I know that
you know, they did a lot of that. Actually, like the guy who was kind of in charge of Todd's shop was this guy, Dan Reber. And he brought in this stuff from like essentially like the sex toy industry called hot melt vinyl.
Yeah.
And so a lot of the stuff that they did at that time was made with hot melt vinyl, which was specifically, I think had come in as a technology that had come in from like making sex toys. And so funny you mentioned that because I think a lot of the stuff specifically on Slither was made out of that material. So
Yeah. Now I had Todd on the show, and he mentioned that there was an article where they said that Slither caused the a sex toy shortage because of how much of it they bought up and stuff.
oh wow, yeah.
But hell yeah. No, and then of course, you also worked on a couple underrated like indie horror films that I thoroughly love and enjoy, especially Trailer Park of Terror, and then as well as Clown, which was produced by Eli Roth. Do you have any just fun stories, or did you get to do any cool gags on either of those? Or
On Clown, that was another show I worked on for Tony Gardner.
oh yeah,
So that was yeah, man, I don't remember exactly like what I made on that. Like I was on that show for just for a couple of weeks. It was like in between something else. I think it was again like I didn't see the movie, but I think like we were making pieces of like his clown costume started to like turn into him, or he started to turn into his clown costume, like almost like they merged together, or like his pieces of his clown costume started to become made out of skin and stuff. So I think it was a lot of that kind of like fabrication and texture kind of work for that transition. And Trailer Park of Terror was another show. I was literally only on it for 1 week, and I was replacing somebody else that I think they had to travel home for a funeral or something like that. So I literally just got the call. That was for Todd Tucker, another guy that I'd worked for a lot over the years. And he was like, "Hey, we got this guy. He's out for a week. He's in the middle of building an effect. Can you come in and just like take over where he left off and keep it moving forward until he comes back in a week?" And I was like, "Sure, no problem." So I went in there, and it was some severed head effect where like somebody gets their head chopped off or whatever. So in that case, I was working on fabricating the connection, like this magnetic connection, so that it was a resettable head that you could put back on and like knock it back off, and all the blood tubes go, and a lot more silicone fabrication of just like matching those two things up and making sure that they fit together. So it was just moving that forward instead why that guy was out. So a lot of stuff happens like that. You'll go in for something for like a couple days or a week, or and half the time you don't even know what you're working on, what it's for, how it's going to be finished, when you're freelancing. Or a lot of times in my case, back in those days, I'd be working 3 or 4 jobs at a time. So I'd work one place during the day, I'd work another place at nights, and work a third place on the weekends. And you're just kind of going in and just, doing little things here and there, and just, constantly kind of just going in like special teams, just going in, like do this one thing, get out. So,
yeah. Hell yeah. Yeah, it's like the punter or whatever it is, but hell yeah. No, go Colts, 3-0, baby. I'm stoked on it. But no, hell yeah. And then of course, like to pair up another couple of films and kind of, to call back to, people bringing you back and stuff like that. You worked on Renfield and Terrifier 3 with Tinsley and his crew and stuff like that. And I know Terrifier 3 was another one that had a ton of people on it. You had John Caglione Jr., Jason Baker and his crew. I've already had 2 other people that were on the on it, from Ryan from Little Shop of Gore is going to be, his episode will drop the same month as yours, next month in October. And then also had Manny Lemus on, who worked on the film as well. But what was some of the stuff that you got to do on Renfield and Terrifier 3, and what was it like just working on those types of films that are just so effects driven and just so fun? You know what I mean? They're different because one's a little bit meaner and for a different audience, but they both are just like super fun horror films, especially Renfield. I could see Renfield being more up your alley just because it's more of a comedy with gore and
yeah.
everything.
Yeah. I mean, I worked for Christian Tinsley for about 3 years without leaving.
Oh yeah.
Worked on a whole bunch of stuff for him. And yeah, so I guess Renfield was the first thing. And yeah, I mean, I have nothing but the best stuff to say about Renfield. I had a great time on that show. When we heard about it, we were really excited about it. Like as we got details about it, we were really excited about it. I was a big fan of Chris McKay, the director. So everything about, oh yeah, you got some of the teeth.
Yeah.
I mean, like hundreds or thousands of those things.
Chris McKay sent him to me because I had him on the show. I couldn't say nicer things about that guy either. Back when I heard Renfield was, sorry to cut you off, but
no, not at all.
Back when back when the movie was announced, I was so stoked because I love Nicolas Cage. So as soon as I heard that he was Dracula, I immediately reached out to Chris McKay. I was like, "Hey, I'd love to have you on to promote the movie," just hoping it would work. And he messaged me back then. It was like, when the time comes, like I'll hit you up and put you on the list to be in marketing. And this was literally like 6 months before the movie even came out. I think they were still like in the midst of like shooting and everything. And lo and behold, like, and this was on Twitter. I hardly use Twitter. Like, I tried it just for this podcast, and I'm already obviously off of it because I still call it Twitter, not X or whatever. But he literally reached back out to me and gave me the information, and like I got put on the list, and then he reached back out when the time came to send out like like the thank you cards for having him on the show, and like then sent me the teeth and
Wow.
stuff. So literally like once I contacted him the first time, like he reached back out, and he's just like he'll randomly just respond to a story and just say something nice about a movie I post, or just anything like that. So couldn't
Yeah,
say nicer
I've
things
had,
about him as well.
I would say I've had the same experience with him. He like much to my surprise, like after working on the movie, and like I couldn't say that when we were filming the movie, even though I was on set for all those weeks, I couldn't even say that. And he was in the shop a ton too. When we were building everything. I couldn't say that he knew who I was. But when the movie came out, I started posting some stuff probably 6 months after the movie was out. I started posting some stuff that I had worked on, and like he started. I think I tagged him in one or two things, and all of a sudden, like just like you said, like he would reach out, he would like my posts, he'd make comments, and I was just like, "Wow, this is crazy!" Like I'm just some dude, and like he's liking my stuff or seeing it or whatever. So yeah, I mean, I had a great experience on that. Um, that show's always going to be special to me because that's the show that got me into the makeup union, which is a real big deal for me. I got to go to set. I was there in New Orleans for 2 months. And primarily like the thing that was my focus was specifically working on Nicolas Cage's heavy prosthetic days.
Okay.
So in the shop, I was involved a lot in the building and designing of like not the designing of the look of it, but the designing of like how it was going to be implemented and like how it was going to break down and be put together and building it. And so like me and two other people were kind of like what Christian referred to as like Team Dracula. So we kind of like were focused really on that while all the other effects were being done by a whole bunch of other artists. And so, yeah, I mean, great time. Like I said, primarily when I was there, like any days that Nick Cage was in like heavy prosthetic days, like I was involved in getting all that stuff onto him and keeping an eye on set and getting it off. Um, Nick Cage, again, like nothing but great things to say about him. He was a pleasure to work with, and like I know it couldn't have been very fun because there was some days he was really just covered head to toe in all kinds of stuff,
Yeah.
heavy prosthetics and goo and blood and whatever. But he seemed to really be having a great time, man. He seemed to really like enjoy it. I think he was really excited to play Dracula, and he brought so much to every take. Like it didn't really, we'd be doing like overnights and working long days, and he delivered on every take as if it was like the only take that they were going to do. You know what I mean? He was just like such a professional, so careful and like very respectful of our work. Like he would, if he had like heavy prosthetics on, he wouldn't even sit down sometimes because he didn't want to mess it up. He had like these big fingernails on. He would hold his hands up like this, and he wouldn't like he'd put his arms on the armrest, but like hold his hands out because he didn't want to mess up the nails. And we're like, hey, you can relax. And he'd be like, no, man, like this is your guys' work, and I want to be respectful of it. I don't want to mess it up. And if he wanted to like, eat something or like take a drink, he would, ask if he could have like his index and thumb fingernails taken off so he could pick some. I mean, he was just like so great and so patient and so nice and kind. And at the end, he autographed like some pictures to each of us who were like his primary makeup artists. And it's a really cool black and white photo of him like in the kind of like the Bela Lugosi Dracula look. And he autographed it to us on the last day. So yeah, I mean, amazing, really great memories about that movie. And I'll say I was a little bit disappointed when it came out, because what we shot and what the movie was supposed to be and what it ended up being were pretty different. There was so much stuff that we shot that was really great that just like was cut out of the movie for whatever reason. And who knows? Like with any of this stuff, you don't know. Like, was it an editing decision? Was it a production decision? Was it a decision by the studio? Who knows what the reasons are? I don't know. I just know that we did a lot of cool stuff that didn't make it into the movie, that was shot and didn't make it into the movie. And there was definitely like a big change in the tone of the final movie from kind of what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bummer. I felt like there was like a lot of potential there for it could have been so much more. I still think it was a good movie, but I think it could have been so much more, like so much better even than it was. And that's saying something because I think it still was a really good movie. So it certainly was fun. Like you can't watch that movie and not have a great time. So yeah, and then Terrifier 3, I purposely kind of tried to back away from it. I wasn't familiar with the movies until Terrifier 3 happened, and Damien was just like, the first two movies, from my understanding, is like basically him and his producing partner. They did everything themselves. They
Yep.
built the sets, they did the makeup, they wrote it, they directed it. Like it was just a very small kind of thing. And Damien was doing the art makeup every single day himself. And so I think that when he on Terrifier 3 got like a decent budget, he was like, came to Christian Tinsley and was like, "Hey, I want you to do this." And Christian was like, "Yeah, but I mean, this is like a big, like it's gonna be more expensive kind of thing." And Damien's like, "Yeah, I want you to do it," kind of thing. So that was really cool to have that opportunity. And I was working on another movie for Christian at the same time. Um, that was a big movie, but it was just a small crew. It was me and basically, I mean, really just me and one other person, like one of the sculptor. And so most of my time was taken up by that movie. But whenever I'd have downtime, I would hop over to help out with Terrifier.
Oh,
So what ended up happening is and that was by design, kind of. I told Christian, I was like, "Hey man, like I'd rather work on this other movie. I'll help you on Terrifier if you need it, but like the blood and guts and gore thing's not so much my thing. So like I'd rather work on this other thing." So I was doing that, but the fun thing is I got to hop over onto Terrifier and just kind of do some fun things. So one thing I did was I did a lot of molds. I made a lot of molds and like cast a lot of skins, like silicone skins for gags. I painted a lot of silicone skins. I got to do one where I had like, paint it to match the actor exactly. So that's always kind of a fun thing to do. And then I only built one gag, but it was my job to build the gag from start to finish. And like essentially my direction was, here's what has to happen for this kill, and here's how it has to look on screen. Like here's the shots we need to get. And beyond that, it was like, you figure it out. Like it's up to you. So that's kind of really great and freeing. And then you can just kind of like bounce ideas about other people. Like, hey, well, how would you do this? What do you think? So the effect that I did, I guess if you don't want to hear, then I guess skip ahead because like it'll be a spoiler. But I built this effect where this girl, again, I didn't see the movie, but this girl is strapped to a chair, and then my direction was that they were going to come up to her, and then she's going to be screaming, and they were going to shove like a glass or like acrylic tube down her throat, and then he was going to hammer it into her throat. And as he was hammering into her throat, her lips were going to split and her jaw would break as this tube is hammered in. Then he puts rats into the tube. The rats go down the tube, and then you have to see in her neck, you have to see the rats like moving around underneath the skin
yeah.
as if they're kind of climbing around and clawing from the inside. And then during that, she has to start vomiting both vomit and blood into the tube and around the tube. And then at the end, he's going to, kill her by slicing her throat. And then when he slices her throat, it opens up and the rats can climb out and all the blood or whatever.
Yeah.
And this all had to happen in one shot. They didn't want to cut away. They just wanted like all in one show. I had to design this effect and build this whole thing so that you could kind of have it all happen like in one shot, which is really tricky because usually with that kind of stuff, like you come for a close up here, then you kind of back up and you see like the surrounding, you have cuts that are built into it to give you a chance to switch over gags or effects or whatever. And I don't know if that's how it ended up being in the film, but at least that was my instruction. Was like it had to be resettable and be all like in one shot. So
Yeah.
that was actually a really fun thing to try to build. Completely horrific, and I don't think I could ever watch it actually at the end. But yeah, I mean, it was a fun time to build it and figure it out. And I like those kind of engineering problems. You know what I mean? I like the problem solving aspect. I think that's the thing that attracts me the most to this industry.
Hell yeah. No, it looks awesome on screen, and it's gonna be infamous forever because it's the one that made David Howard Thornton throw up when they were filming it. So
Oh, is that right?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
When I was talking to Ryan from Little Shop of Gore, because he was the on-set department, so he was the one
Yeah.
that like had to like run the effect and stuff, and he was talking about that was the hardest effect to run, and it was only because like right when they started it, like something that they did, like they put the rat down the tube and it shot across the room, like I guess they like did too much pressure or something with like the CO2 tank,
Oh,
and
wow.
and then also that I guess they had you build it to where all the rats came out at once, and then Damien decided on the day that he wanted it to come out like one at a time. So they had to like change the effect. I will say it doesn't look like I don't. I was like that shit looks amazing on screen. So everything worked from start to finish. But that's one thing I love about practical effects. So is how many like layers they go through. You got a designer, a creator, or a fabricator. And then you got the people on set that have to make it work and all that stuff, and then a director that has to make it look good. So it's such a collaborative thing that's why I love having makeup effects artists. And it's there's so many that work on so many good films together. So but no, that effect, like I said, that effect is going to go down as legendary for sure because everybody's like, which one was it? And that's the one that he said. He said that when that happened, I guess no, he said that when they did the throw up part and like all that throw up stuff started coming up, is that's when it made David Howard Thornton throw up.
Oh wow, yeah. I mean, I remember testing that in the shop and having to do this thing where like vomit had to come up, but also blood, and it kind of had to stay separate. I think in the shop I was using whatever I could find, and I think I went into the break room and I was looking through all the cabinets, and I found like this old, who knows how old it was, like little tin of, it was like salsa, but it was like chili salsa, so it was kind of like green and chunky, but it was old, so it was kind of browning, and that's what I used to test her like for the vomit. And I completely forgot about the rats coming out of the throat because I remember building those. I cast up all these silicone rats in the tails, and they were all like on a line with like basically like fishing line, like monofilament going through them. So you could went down through the tube and you could pull the fishing line, and then they were like on strings in between them. You could pull them, and like the rats come like like one or two at a time.
Yeah.
And I built this whole thing that went from underneath. It was basically just like a wooden stick, like a dowel. And on the end of it, from the same mold of like the rats, I had just cast up little pieces of their nose. And I affixed them to this, like a piece of all thread on this wooden rod, just like the noses in different angles coming out, like different lengths of the noses. So you could just put this rod up there and it would come out kind of here underneath the skin. And then between the skin and like the core of the neck, which was soft so her head could move around, you could just twist this rod and then it would twist and it would move. You'd see like the rat noses kind of moving, and then you move it up and down. So it just like you have this undulating. So real simple stuff, you know what I mean? But like super effective,
No, fuck yeah. No, I know that's a lot of people's favorite kill of the film too. Like when they talk about it and stuff too. So
maybe I'll have to watch like a YouTube clip or something like that. I don't know. Like I'll probably watch it like this,
Yeah. No, it is rough for sure, especially if you're not into that stuff. Because I'm so desensitized that when I watch it, I'm like, oh, that was awesome. But I could definitely see where it would be somebody could easily throw up from watching it. If
I mean, I've been told by people who worked on the movie, they're like, if you watch this stuff, they're like, you probably could handle Terrifier because they told me that it's not like super realistic and like gritty. Like it's so over the top and ridiculous. It's almost like into, like Evil Dead, like where it's almost like silly. Like Renfield is actually a very bloody movie. Renfield is like horrifically gory, but it's so over the top and so like almost like gory in a comedic way.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, maybe I could handle some of that just because it's not meant to be visceral. It's meant to be more funny. Hopefully I'm not insulting anybody by saying that. I think it's meant to be kind of funny and over the top gory, right? Like, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's definitely why the fans love it for sure, is the over the top, ness of it and stuff. And there's definitely scenes that are like for instance, that kill is definitely more like you could I think you could watch it easier than like the one in the first movie where he's just chopping the girl down, because that's got a little bit more.
Yeah, that's what I heard about. That was like my introduction to like, hey, this is what these movies are about. I was like, geez, like this is crazy.
Yeah, and that's a lot more like realistic too. Plus, it was Damien on a lower budget, so it was like
Nice.
I guess it looks a little bit like less real, but because of like the more realisticness of it, you know what I mean, like stuff like that. But no, hell yeah, that's pretty much all I had to ask about with the horror stuff. But I have one more like career question for you before the two wrap up questions that I mentioned, and that is you worked on a bunch of you do costuming and stuff, and you've worked in the superhero world from, if I'm not mistaken, all the way back in the original Fantastic Four, all the way up until Captain or Falcon and Winter Soldier, if I'm not mistaken, or Captain America and Winter Soldier. What was it? What was it like getting to work on those? And do you have any like favorite costumes that you've made over the years?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so yeah, it's exactly. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't ever mean to do specialty costumes, but it was a kind of a confluence of two things. One, there just started to be a lot of specialty costumes, and there wasn't anybody who specifically did that type of work when it started happening. So it kind of fell to like the makeup effect shops, and the shop that I was working for at the time just started doing a lot of these specialty costumes. So I was there. So I just started working on a lot of that kind of stuff. And then I started to get known for doing that. And then I actually ended up running, one of the three big shops that did all of the costumes, like all those superhero costumes for like that 15-year period. There was three shops that did all of them.
Yeah.
And I ended up being the supervisor at one of those shops for that time. So for 15 years, basically, I did nothing but specialty costumes. I worked on pretty much every Marvel movie from Thor all the way through to Endgame.
Yeah.
And then during that time, I also did all the Hunger Games movies. I did the first two Deadpool movies. I did all the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, like Mummy, Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. I think the first big costume movie I did was The Chronicles of Riddick, and that was 2003. So that was really like the first time I think I did like a big specialty costume show. And I was supervising all the casting of the armor on that. And I was a kid, man. I was like 21 years old, and I was like supervising like my own satellite shop with my own crew. It was crazy. So, yeah, man, I had a great time. Like, it was an exciting time to be involved in all that stuff because, like, it was like the heyday of Marvel. And then at the same time, we were working on a lot of DC stuff too. So I was working on like Man of Steel and doing like Aquaman's costume and Superman's costumes. I had worked on Superman Returns, which was the Brandon Ruth one.
Yeah.
Like I said, I got to do both of the first two Deadpool movies, which is really exciting because Ryan Reynolds was really involved, and those were super comic accurate, and people loved that. So that was cool. But then like lots of spacesuits, like the J.J. Abrams Star Trek movies, got to do a lot of cool spacesuits. And I even worked for SpaceX, helping design some of their spacesuits for like the real astronauts for a little while. Worked on Interstellar. That was also some more spacesuit kind of stuff. So it was just accidental. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just kind of did, and then I got swept up in it. And then in 2019, I kind of parted ways with that shop that I'd been with for all those years, and was back out in the wild and freelancing again. And at first, people just knew me for costumes, so I ended up doing more costumes. I ended up working on the Orville and Lost in Space over at Spectral Motion, and then COVID happened and everything shut down. And so when everything shut down, I just started kind of saying to myself, like, well, look, there's no work, everything's closed. So I had all these projects that I'd wanted to do for years, just like for fun, just like personal projects. And I was like, well, the excuses, I was like, well, I don't have the time. Well, I got the time now. Yeah. So I decided to really utilize that time where you couldn't do anything else to try to make something cool that I wanted to do for a long time. So I started getting back into makeup effects, just in my garage. And so I started just like building makeups of, I wanted to envision what some of my favorite characters from when I was a kid, from like toys and TV shows and comic books in the 80s, if they were in a movie, like what would they look like? Maybe like, characters that didn't get made originally in a live action movie. So I started off doing makeups from Thundercats, like some Mumra makeups. And then I did a Panthro makeup. And then I was like, I want to do a Ninja Turtle makeup. So, obviously Jim Henson had done those really well with like a suit and an animatronic head. And then in the newer ones, they were all CG. But nobody had ever done a Ninja Turtles just like as a makeup, just like a makeup where the performance is being driven by the actor's face. So I was like, I want to try to do that. So I did a Ninja Turtle makeup, and then I ended up doing all four of them. And then I started doing more Ninja Turtle characters. And then I did Squidward from SpongeBob SquarePants. And it turned into this thing where I started taking cartoon characters and imagining them in real life. Like, what would they look like if they actually existed, or if they were in a live action movie? And that was all just something I started off as a project, just building stuff in my garage for fun. And I just started posting those on Instagram, which to that point I had never even used Instagram. I never posted on there at all. So I started posting that stuff just to share it with people. And so then coming out of COVID, it completely like flipped over my career back to makeup. So now people started to know me for those makeups. And so then I started getting calls for a bunch of makeup jobs instead of the costume jobs. So that kind of brought me back into the makeup world, because the first 10 years of my career was all makeup. And then I had this 15-year detour into costumes. And now like the last 5 years I've been back doing makeup again. So, that kind of brings us all full circle to today.
Hell yeah. No, I could definitely see where you could get, like, once you start in the costume world, it's hard to get out, because like you said, that Marvel run, they were doing 2 or 3 movies a year, then to jumping over to the DCEU with Man of Steel and stuff like that. You worked on, if I'm not mistaken, you worked on my favorite, it's a hot take, but Batman v Superman is my favorite superhero film of all time.
I mean, I love the look of that movie. You know what I mean? Like I know people maybe have issues with the story or whatever, but I definitely like the look of that movie. And to an extent, we get like fatigued with like superheroes, or people get fatigued with like the Zack Snyder thing. But like, man, if you think back to like when Zack Snyder started off with like even with Dawn of the Dead and 300, and like no one had ever seen anything like that before. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was like he designed a look that like how lucky we are to be bored with something because we've been privileged enough to like experience something awesome so much that we're bored of it. Do you know what I mean? It's like, like, I mean, like I love like candy and donuts and like and sweets and stuff. You know what I mean? But like, there's times when you go a little bit too far with it, and then you feel sick, and you're like, you don't want it for a while. And it's like, when you're a little kid, you can't imagine such a thing. You know what I mean? Like where you're sick of something that's so awesome. And I think that for a lot of stuff like that, when I was a kid, I couldn't have imagined how many awesome like movies we got, superhero movies, or like interesting looks, or a really specific like design sense, like a Zack Snyder or like a Tim Burton, where they have like a very specific aesthetic to the point where you get sick of it. Like that's, I mean, to me, that seems like a privilege than more like something to complain about. So like, yeah, Batman versus Superman was cool because we got to do where I was working Superman's costume and Aquaman's costume, and then another shop did Batman's costumes and Wonder Woman's costumes. And when we were building all this stuff, nobody had a clue that any of those superheroes were in there other than Batman and Superman. Yeah. So like Wonder Woman and Aquaman was like super top secret, and it was like really exciting to be working on something that people didn't even know was coming. Yeah. So yeah, man, like yeah, that was really cool, exciting times for sure.
Fuck yeah. No, and I love that Superman costume. I mean, I love Aquaman's too, especially because it's just like, how do you make Aquaman badass? It's like you put Jason Momoa in that costume and boom, you got it. So
yeah,
no, hell yeah. But and you kind of it's a perfect segue into my next question. You already kind of mentioned a few IPs that you worked on, while getting back into makeup effects throughout the pandemic and stuff with, Thundercats and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. If you ever got the opportunity to do, and of course this being hypothetical, say you got the opportunity to do any film IP or character that you wanted to for a film, and we'll say horror for the sake of the podcast.
Sure.
And of course, Universal Monsters is included, everything. Who would you like to, interpret for your do your own take of for a film?
I mean, yeah, I mean, horror specific. I would love a crack at any of like the classic Universal monsters. I know we have for sure two, if not three, Frankenstein movies coming out in the very near future. And one of them actually, the makeup effects were done by a good friend of mine, Mike Hill, for the Guillermo del Toro film. And if you should talk to Mike Hill because he'd be a great guy to talk to on this podcast. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so I haven't seen what anything looks like yet, but I can't imagine you're going to do a better Frankenstein reimagining than whatever Mike and Guillermo have come up with. So I'm very excited to see what that looks like. There's nobody I've met in my life that has more of like a reverence and a love for those Universal monsters than Mike, and certainly a Guillermo is the same. I think that's why like the two of them are like such a good working team. So and I love what Rick Baker did with the Wolfman. I know that movie kind of came and went. But I love the look that he did. That was like a nice, like classic updating. So I feel like Frankenstein's monster and Wolfman have been done. So, I don't think we've seen like a nice reimagining yet of like the creature from the Black Lagoon. There's been a lot of like starts and stalls on that project, right? Like, and there's been lots of stuff online of like maquettes and like makeup tests or whatever. But I would love to work on something like that. You know what I mean? Like just do something that hasn't been done yet. Like update a creature or bring it into modern day that hasn't been done yet. Like in a meaningful way or in a cool way. That would be really cool. As far as horror stuff, I mean, like obviously, I don't think there's anything I'm a bigger fan of than Ninja Turtles. I mean, that's like my biggest thing for sure. And I've done a lot of that stuff, but I would love to do a lot of that stuff with a budget, and they keep saying that there's going to be a Last Ronin movie, but who knows if that'll actually ever happen. I just can't imagine any film studio nowadays being willing to do Ninja Turtles practically. I think no matter what, there's going to be either CG completely or heavily done with CG. Like I just can't imagine a world where somebody's willing to do that nowadays. But man, it would be great, to see it because the technology is so much better now. You know what I mean? Than it was then, even if it was just a short or something.
Yeah.
So
No, I would love to see that as well. I'm with you. It's one of those, it's like it's hard to think of any like company that would do, practical Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but I'd love to see it. If they ever do a live action one again, I really enjoyed the Mutant Mayhem film that they did with, the Seth Rogen and all them did, the animation. But I would love to see them. So that would be awesome to still, because they have that run and they're supposed to do a sequel. They even put out a series on Paramount Plus for that animated stuff. They have that for the children. Let's get the last Ronin out there for the adults that grew up
yeah,
on the stuff. And no, that'd be super awesome. Especially while you still got Judith Hogue available or Haig. I don't know how you say her last name
yeah. I mean,
exactly,
she'd be about the. You'd actually have to age her up even a little bit, right? Like
but yeah.
she's older now, which is great. But I mean, look, that would be great to see a live action Last Ronin. I can't imagine they do it with practical effects. But I did a Last Ronin makeup as one of the Ninja Turtle makeups I did, So, but again, that was just like me in my garage with whatever money I can afford myself. Like if I could do it with a budget, it'd be amazing. I would love to work on that movie if it happens. I don't know, who I would even talk to have that happen, or like a live action Thundercats, or like I did I did a Beastman makeup and a Hordak makeup from Masters of the Universe, like from He-Man, and they got a really good response online. People love those. They're making a live action Masters of the Universe right now, so I'm interested to see what that stuff looks like. I think Barry Gower over in the UK doing the makeup effects for that. And if that's the case, then I'm sure the makeup effects will be amazing, because it doesn't get much better, you know what I mean? Certainly over in Europe, like him, Mark Coulier, and Neil Gorton are kind of like the big dogs over there. And they're just really putting out phenomenal work. So,
Hell yeah. And I'm a huge Barry Gower fan myself. I've tried to get him on the podcast, but he's a busy guy. So I think when
I'm sure, yeah.
I think when I hit him up, he was like, "Hit me back in a couple months. I'm working on, because like that's the thing about practical effects is that a lot of people don't realize is you guys go back to back with projects and stuff. So sometimes it's like you got to fit in the interviews when you can, and just like the little stuff that you like to enjoy and stuff. When you're not on set or working on a film, but no, hell yeah, and no, I'm with you. I'm really excited for Guillermo. I can never say his name, so I'm not even gonna try. I'm really excited for Del Toro's Frankenstein, especially, and I'll definitely reach out to Mike Hill. I would love to have him on the show as well. But I saw the trailer for The Bride. It's cool to see a different take on that, but I would have been more stoked to see something a little closer to the original story. But I'm really excited for Lee Cronin's The Mummy. I'm excited to see what they do with that as well. But I'm with you. I'd love to see, like I said, Creature from the Black Lagoon is my favorite of all the Universal monsters. Shape of Water was cool and close, but not exactly what I would want in a creature film. So I would love to see somebody actually just do a creature remake. So
I was really bummed to see, the Tom Cruise Mummy not do very well, because I know that they were setting up for like the dark universe thing, you know what I mean? Like the extended universe of Monster World. And like they even introduced some characters like Russell Crowe in there as Mr. Hyde. And I would have loved to see something happen with all that. It was a shame to kind of see that not be successful. But I mean, Universal does seem to have invested a lot of money recently, like in expanding their theme parks and building that whole dark world thing. So I would love to see a revival for those classic monster films and see those come back in some kind of meaningful way. And I mean, I'm glad that there's 2 different Frankenstein movies coming out. Like, awesome. Like, what a world to live in. We have not 1, but 2 Frankenstein movies coming out. And they seem to have decidedly different tones. Like, one seems to be like a much more straight take on like the classic story. And the other one is like, seems to be a completely different spin. Like, I was actually really confused about the Maggie Gyllenhaal, The Bride, right, movie with Christian Bale, about exactly what it was about. And like everybody else, I saw those initial like press photos that were released, kind of like, what is this? But I'm friends with the makeup artists who worked on the film and who helped design the makeup for Frankenstein's monster. And speaking to them about like, well, what is the movie actually about? And like, kind of what's the basic story? And like, why does he look this way? And like, now that I have a better understanding of it, now I'm actually really excited to see it, because it's like, okay, cool. Now I know, like, I can go along with you on this ride. You just got to tell me like what is the intention, so that I can like set my mind right to be like, okay, this is the ride we're going on. Do you know what I mean? I think that's where audiences get upset, is they go into a movie with an expectation of this beloved IP that they know and love, and they want to go and see like a rehash of the same thing that they know and love, and like they want to see all those like, those Easter eggs and like those tips of the hat, and like they want to see they want to see the same thing they've already seen, but again, right? And so then if they go and see something that's completely different and subverts their expectations, without somebody kind of explaining to that first, that's when I think there's a backlash, they get upset. But I think most people are pretty good if you say, hey, here's what we set out to do, here's what our intention was. Then people are like, okay, great. Like now I know the expectation is I can judge it with those expectations as opposed to judging it with this unfair parameter of what I think it's supposed to be, right? You tell me what you set out to make, and then I can decide if you made a good vision, in my opinion, of that thing, as opposed to like, you destroyed this thing that I love. Like, well, that's the funniest thing to me. When I put those Ninja Turtle makeups out that I did, I was so excited to put them out there. And I put everything, like all of my love into those. And I was completely unprepared for the internet because I was so new to Instagram, and I was completely unprepared for the reaction. And it was horrible. And I would say it was unanimously hated. I mean, I got thousands and thousands and thousands of shares and comments, and they were all pretty much negative, just shitting on it and saying how horrible it was because it didn't look like the Jim Henson Turtles. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think that, people are not always necessarily ready to see something different unless you say like, hey, I was trying to do something different here. Yeah. Like, and it's always funny to me when they say, you're ruining my childhood. I'm like, no. Your dad or your uncle did that. Like I had nothing to do with that. And like the thing that you loved from your childhood, that still exists. Yeah. So you can go back and watch that again. You know what I mean? Like I'm making something new. And I think people have to give a little bit of leeway with that. Like this is something new. This is a reimagine, like even like the new It movies. You know what I mean? Like, sure, if you love the Tim Curry like original like It miniseries, then you can always watch that anytime you want to. But like there's no reason to just remake the same thing exactly how it was made again, right? You got to do something new and push it in a different direction. And it doesn't ruin or take away from the thing that you love. It's still there, and you can still love it. So,
yeah, to kind of call back to Dawn of the Dead, that one, like other than the mall, it's like a completely different film, and a lot of people say like this is one of the best remakes of all. Like they say you could call it something else, but that's how a lot of the best remakes work out, are films that could just be called something else and still be good films. And now I'm with you. That's why I like the Bride trailers, because it goes ahead and sets that expectation up. It goes ahead and lets you know you're not getting the same film. This is kind of like a Bonnie and Clyde meets, Bride of Frankenstein. And then it also lets you know the tone of the film, from like the fun music, the fast paced like editing, and literally saying, here comes the motherfucking bride in the trailer. You know what I mean? So it's like, now I'm with you. If you go into that film and you're mad that it's not the Bride of Frankenstein that you grew up on, then that's on you. You know what I mean? So,
right.
And same thing with the Wolfman. I didn't like the Wolfman that just came out at the beginning of the year, but that's just because of other complaints that I had with it. But going in, I didn't expect it to be like the same type of Wolfman movie. I expected it to kind of become a body horror and more like a slow burn thing, and that's what it was. And I didn't leave like hating the movie. It was just kind of like it just wasn't spectacular. You know what I mean? In my opinion, but the makeup was cool. Like everything, like the film was technically great, but again, that's another one that's like story wise, there were some parts that I had issues with and stuff, but that's just personal preference too. So
yeah, people had to expect that, right? Because it was the same production company that did the wasn't like Lee Wanell, right? It was the same production company that did like the Invisible Man a few years ago. Yeah, so it's like if you saw the Invisible Man and you saw what, again, like I don't want to give it away for people who haven't seen it, but like when you see that, it's a completely different take on the Invisible Man, about why he's invisible, how he's invisible, and like what he does with that. You know what I mean? So like if you saw that, and then the same people are making Wolfman movie, you have to expect like they're not going to make a straight remake of the Wolfman. You saw that Invisible Man, like, okay, they're going to do something different with the Wolfman. It's going to be a completely different take on it. The same as Hollow Man with Kevin Bacon. That's a great movie. It's an Invisible Man movie, but it's not the Invisible Man, right? It's a completely different thing. So
no, I agree 100%, but that's what I was saying. Like, just like I like when they like. That's why I hate when people like. I agree. I hate when people go in and hate on the stuff, but especially when they're literally fed like in the marketing, like, hey, this is not going to be that, and then they still come out like, oh damn, it didn't do this, and I'm like, it wasn't going to do these things. Like, what do you like? It just showed you ahead of time, like it gave you the warning, and you still came out mad. So like, but like my problems with the Wolfman is like it didn't feel like I didn't love the chemistry between Christopher Abbott and Julia Gardner. I felt like the storyline, like there's like that's what I'm saying, is it didn't lack because it was changing from the original. It lacked in other reasons, in my opinion, and other things. So that's why.
Did you like the Joe Johnston one with Benicio del Toro and Anthony Hopkins?
Yes, I like that. That one I liked a lot, and I don't understand why it was kind of like panned at the time. I think it was just because it was slower than people expected, or long.
Yeah, I liked it, man. Like I mean, obviously Rick Baker, his makeup effects were amazing, and I'm a huge fan of Joe Johnston as an artist, as a director. Like, I mean, one of my favorite movies of all time is The Rocketeer. And I love like what he did with I love what he did with the first Captain America movie. Like it was just I mean, it didn't even feel like a Marvel movie, right? It felt just like a World War II movie. Like it was just like such a great. He's so good at like that genre and like period films. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean, I love that Wolfman movie, but
Yeah.
yeah, again, didn't take off, I guess. But
No, yeah, that's why I'm glad we're getting The Bride as well as we're getting Frankenstein in the same year because they are such different tones. And like I like those period piece ones, but then again I like stuff like The Wolfman and The Invisible Man where they bring it in today's society. So it's that's one thing I like about the Universal monsters is you can give me three of the films and you can give me three takes on each one in a year and I won't be upset. I'll go see all three just because I want to see what people can do with those like thoughts and ideas and stuff. So it's almost like they become creatures, you know what I mean? Like the werewolves, you know, sometimes they're werewolves, but sometimes they're like, if it's a single person, it's kind of like a Wolfman movie. It's just a completely different take. And same thing with, like you said, Hollow Man being, you know, there's all these movies where people go invisible and they don't ever call it, you know, they don't always call it Invisible Man, but in like Shape of Water too. Like that's you know it's a take on the creature from the Black Lagoon or the Gill Man, you know. So stuff
right.
like that. But hell yeah, pretty much my last question for you before leaving it up to you to like you know promote anything you have coming up or anything else is do you have a horror story of your own and you know it could be from a bad day on set or something in your personal life if you ever dealt with the supernatural or just something scary as shit that happened to you?
Uh, I've never had like anything that I could definitively say was like a supernatural event in my life. Um, but I've filmed in some locations that were like that were really creepy.
Yeah.
I'm a big history nerd, and I like love history, and I'm a pretty nostalgic person. And like there's like a I think it's demolished now, but there was like an abandoned like mental hospital out in like the Los Angeles area that people used to film at all the time. And I filmed there a bunch of times, like overnights. That place is always really creepy. You go into the rooms and it was like some of the rooms is like they were just the way that they had left them. You know what I mean? There's still like equipment and beds and sheets like just left there the way they were whenever they left. And so that place always sticks out to me. Um, but when we were filming Renfield in New Orleans, like that's just a city that's like steeped in like superstition and like history and kind of like a creepy, eerie feeling.
Yeah.
And we were shooting one night in I guess it was like it was like it used to be like a private school. I think it was like a private school attached to a church. And I don't think it had been in operation since like the 60s or something like that. So it had been there for a long time. And I think it got used periodically for filming locations and stuff. And that place was so creepy. And so we were filming overnights. And when you're there and there's a bunch of crew there and a bunch of lights and everything, like not creepy at all.
Yeah.
But in between stuff, when I had downtime, I would just like take a flashlight and I would just start walking down hallways. And there's places that not have electricity, right?
Yeah.
So I would just start walking down hallways and upstairs and like opening doors and looking inside of rooms and like, yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever been so creeped out in my life, man. Because you're just seeing like these little kids, like their school desks are still there. There's still
Yeah.
stuff written on a chalkboard. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, it was wild. So I mean, like, I filmed in some creepy places, like that definitely gave me like, that made me feel some kind of way. But I never had like a thing happen where I was, like, where I got, I guess going back to what I was saying, like it was what I was imagining in my head was probably it was way more horrific than anything that actually happened to me. Like I never had like a thing happen to me, but in my head, like my head played plenty of games with me and spooked me out for sure. So
Hell yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. New Orleans history, like alone in like horror films and stuff, like American Horror Story used it a lot. And then there was one recently that I love one of my favorite shows, Preacher. They had a season that was in New Orleans and stuff like that. So it's become one of those places I've wanted to visit, but I'm always like, when I go, I gotta see like a bunch of the voodoo stuff, and I want to see all that creepy stuff. You know what I mean? Like because it's got such rich history. I tell people all the time because they talk about like hauntings here and there and stuff, and I'm like the place that has like the oldest buildings is always like the creepiest places, you know what I mean? So I've never dealt with anything myself either, but
I mean, like obviously New Orleans, they know who they are. So they have a lot of like ghost tourist tours where you go on these tours and like they'll drive you around or you go around, they'll tell you stories about what happened here or what happened there. So like they know, that's kind of like one of the things they're known for. So if you ever do make it there, they have like a lot of really good tours you can go on. And I think you can even stay. There's that one house that's like that hell house where like they found that woman like I think around the turn of the century where she had like had a bunch of like slaves locked up like in the basement in the attic that she was like torturing.
yeah.
And I think maybe like somebody famous lived in that house later. Like I think like Trent Reznor like lived in that house for a while after the fact. Anyway, anybody who's hearing this, like, they'll know what I'm talking about because that's like a very famous like story about this woman who was torturing these people in her house in like the late early 1900s. And that house is like, I think you could spend the night there, maybe even like, I don't know. There's plenty of creepy things to see there. Yeah, it's a big tourist thing there. So,
oh yeah. No, no, exactly what you're talking about. That's what I was referencing with American Horror Story in season 3. They have like a backstory where Kathy Bates plays that lady, and
okay, there you go. Yeah, there you go.
They use her as like of course they fictionalize like the story, like turn it supernatural towards the end, but they show a lot of the real stuff that she did. Like keeping them in cage, like keeping people in cages.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you don't even have to change it that much. It was plenty horrific, the real story. So
yeah. I don't know why I want to say Marie Laveau, but I don't think that's right. That sounds like a character from something. It's just popping in my head.
Maybe.
But hell yeah, I appreciate you for coming on the show, man. It was a blast chatting with you. Do you have anything coming up that you want to promote, or just anything that you? I know some people do some side stuff. Like Tinsley, they do the transfers and masks. There's other people that sell like rent out props and stuff like that. If you have anything like that you want to promote as well, you're more than welcome to. But
yeah, I mean, I don't have anything specifically to promote right now. I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that I worked on that's in the can. It'll be coming out. But I mean, I would say the best thing is I would just ask people if follow me on Instagram. My Instagram's Dan Makes Stuff, and yeah, please just follow me there. I'm putting out work all the time. I've done like 6 makeups in the last 8 days, just like personal projects for fun. So I'm gonna be releasing all that stuff, and yeah, I would just love for people to see my work and comment and share it and follow me and tell me what you think, even if you hate it. Like, I can take it. I've in my time since my first initial makeup, I've gotten a thicker skin. I know how to take criticism a little bit better now. So I like to learn and grow from it.
Hell yeah. Now, and I'll definitely put the link to that in the description so people can, click real easy. If they're listening, it's in the show notes, or if they're watching on YouTube, it'll be in the show notes as well. But I appreciate you for joining me, man. It was a blast chatting with you.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Of course, man.